Ron.
Okay, folks, 7 o'clock. Call the meeting to order, please. We have 2 items at front. Saltscapes prize draw. Ron, do you want to give us kind of the context of that?
The town has attended the Saltscapes Expo from April 21st to 23rd in Halifax. We try to go every year. It's a major trade show and event for people who are considering traveling during the summer. So we always have a booth there, and often we collect names, and the people who are drawn will win a nice prize of Sackville area merchandise. So the idea tonight is to draw a winner from the people who put in a ballot at the show.
Okay. So we'll draw from those who dropped in. And I think that's one. The winner is Sherry Craig, and she has a 902 number. Okay, thank you. Similarly, community partnerships. Jamie, would you be able to speak to that for a second?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Back in March 25th, the Community Partnerships Group had a door-to-door campaign where we visited a variety of neighborhoods in the community where we know we've experienced some elevated levels of noise complaints. So part of this was, I guess, to get out there and hear from members of the community, but and introduce them, I guess, to the Community Partnerships Working Group. But secondly, I guess we had an online survey which we were introducing to people. And as part of that online survey, they had the opportunity to leave their email address and be entered into a prize to win some swag from the town, the Mount Allison Students Union, and Mount Allison University. So we have we're drawing 3 names, and we'll follow up with 3 prize packs after we get the email address.
Okay. Okay, these are based on email without the suffix. So number 1 is J. Couric. And winner number 2 is J. Boom. And winner number 3 is LST Louis. So that's enough information that you can follow up with them, certainly. Okay. Thank you. Can I have a motion on the agenda? Moved by Councillor Aikens, seconded by Deputy Mayor O'Neill. Question? Those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion is approved. Open question period. Any questions? No? Hearing none. You've all seen the agenda. Are there any disclosures of interest? No disclosures of interest on the agenda. Okay, thank you. Move to minutes, regular council meeting, April 10th. Councillor Evans, move approval. Seconded by Councillor Aiken. Those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Regular council meeting is approved. Special meeting of council, May 1st. Anyone? Moved by Councillor Aiken. Seconded by Councillor Butcher. Question? All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion is carried. Third set of minutes, closed in camera special meeting, council May 1, 2017. Moved by Deputy Mayor O'Neill, seconded by Councillor Evans. Question? Those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Minutes are carried. Any business arising from the minutes noted by council? Nope. Southeast Regional Services, item number 7. I'll begin. It was a fairly busy meeting on April 25th. One of the items was a presentation on the proposed Regional Recreation Master Plan. Some of you have seen that document since. There were several questions that I raised about what the purpose was. Was it for an endorsement of some type? What stage were we at? And basically it was to inform and then have a commentary period in which then it would be brought back to the commission at that point. I did ask, there were ratios, and you may have seen that, comparing the types of recreational facilities in the southeast against national and international per capita measurements. My question was whether our population profile conforms to those population profiles or not. And it was felt that there was close enough that despite how much we hear we are older, fatter, poorer than the rest of the country, balder in some cases, that none of that it was still applicable, that it was still a fair comparison. I want to ask for clarification. Would the document, if it was adopted as a regional recreational document, be used in determining if the NB Borrowing Board will support local borrowing board for a recreational facility? The reply was they believed it would be. So any regional-based recreational facility that requires borrowing, they would want to look at this as a document as to whether it fits the regional priorities as noted. I asked about related expenditures. One of the questions we've always had here is the town finds the capital it can put into it, borrows the capital it needs, and then pays the operating deficit and pays the capital payback costs, although in some cases those are regionally used facilities. So there's always been a question, and this has happened around the country, of whether that's a fair fiscal distribution of when you create a regional recreational asset. And I asked how that had been addressed, and basically said, well, not what we need to do better at that. We haven't really addressed it in this document so far. So hopefully we'll see that a bit in the next one. And there is an electronic inventory of recreational assets that is able to be used. So this is based upon an electronic format of the descriptions of all of the facilities. And that leaves open how that might be updated, whether it's something that individual communities can do or whether it's something the commission would have to do or not. So I don't think that affects any of the delivery options it might have. So that was one of the major things that happened. Another one was the regional tourism. I had attended the strategic committee of the board the week prior, and as you may recall, we had talked about the regional a regional tourism effort for marketing of tourism that is based upon the destinations concept of tourism. And it is one that is being used in most jurisdictions now. And the destination characterizes the type of people who pursue certain things. And there's 9 or 12 types of destinations or participants in tourism. And it was decided that this was the right model. The province has adopted the same model, but oddly enough, the province has chosen that they're only going to market 2 of those 9 destinations. So their money will only proceed on 2. And the problem is that Southeast area wants to see all 9 because we have attractions for all 9. So one of the trade-offs there was that the region has to develop a bit more in terms of a marketing strategy for those broader destinations than the province is prepared to do. And if we don't do it, nobody's going to do it. So what was suggested was there were a couple of opportunities that an interim board, which is mostly comprised of participants in that sector, by business sector, the tourism business sector would be an interim board to guide the development of this regional tourism plan for 9 destinations as we develop it. The other was that there is probably going to be a recommendation that the commission charge next year something about 1/8 of 1 cent of tax assessment of all contributing parties towards the cost of a core of the board and of a core person or two in it. So that, in our case, I don't know, Mike, you want to make a guess at 1/8 of 1 cent and a few $1,000s? Okay, so that would be ours. What is notable is that this money would also come from LSDs who do not contribute anything. So there will be almost an equal contribution by the time the LSDs amount is added to their tax rate from the LSDs taxes as everybody else. So that in turn is, we feel, justified because it allows, at that point, having the capacity in the board and the outline of the framework, that they can then apply for ACOA grants, which are available for tourism, and also build towards the hotel levy, which has been talked about for some time, and that would be the future funding would come from pursuing grants and creating a management structure, creating a hotel levy that would all go into this. So short term is to flesh out the strategy, and the longer term is to build the capacity towards it. The point, I think, that needs to be really looked at is how will that operate? And that question was answered with, this will be the coordination and marketing, that there will have to be a network of linkages from people who actually work in tourism, both in the business and in local governments, in order to make it work. And it was not an attempt to tell our staff what to do. It would be working the other way around. So that was an interesting topic as well. All of the Service Commission boards are to meet. It was originally set in May. The date is now June 10th, so there is a province-wide meeting for all of the 8 service commissions scheduled for June 10th, and I believe it's in the Miramichi. Is that what you recall, Joyce? No? And the purpose is to hear the minister's feedback from some commentary that they were seeking out from people. And so that's the purpose of what the commissions are, what feedback they've got, and where they're going from here. And the next board meeting will be the AGM of the commission. That's my report for the commission. Question? Councillor Aiken.
Thank you, Worship. This 1/8 of a cent, is that in effect a tax?
That would be the amount that would be asked for people to contribute, and it would be up to each area whether they chose to increase a tax or whether they chose to reallocate the funds for it. In LSD's case, it would be an increase to their tax rate.
Which brings me to a second question. Does the commission have the authority to impose taxes?
Nope. Nope, they have to agree.
They have?
No, the LSDs have to agree. They actually have to ask the minister, they have to have a vote amongst them and ask the minister to change the tax rate. It's not a commission mandate to change the tax.
Thank you.
Councillor Evans?
On the same, and partly it's been answered on the tax part, it's not going to show up as a separate tax. We were being told that we have to pay it the same way we pay our other bills. Okay. I'm going to ask the other question. The 9 areas of tourism and the 2 that the province is going to focus on, is that correct? The region, our region said, we want you to have a policy that addresses all 9 because we have them. What were the 2 that the province wanted, and how has that impasse been resolved?
They're characterized as they are people from around Greater Toronto area that are seeking certain specific types of experiences that are more of cultural, and that's kind of one area. And the other is from Quebec, who are seeking certain types of francophone-based experiences. So they're not a whole lot different other than the English basis. The other 9 are much more widespread over it. So the province's, as I understand it, the province's policy endorses all 9, but it's putting its marketing money into 2 for this coming time. Okay.
Can I just sort of finish up about the tax part? Because as Councillor Aiken said, has the Regional Service Commission agreed to, that we will all pay our 1/8 of a cent? Because I'm constantly or continually confused by a Regional Service Commission not being another level of government. It's made up primarily of mayors and appointed representatives of the local service districts. And when we passed over our garbage collection and the solid waste management and our planning, those are services we were already paying for. This is the first time, other than the commission itself, that we're being asked to pay for something, and I'm wondering about governance here. Is it we decide how we spend our money? Are we being told that we have to do this? Have you as as a representative decided? Like, I'm a little confused on that part of it.
Well, I think the description of 1/8 of 1 cent was used to show what type of amount of money they would be seeking to move on this. So it was used to describe, because we're familiar with the tax rates of what that means. But what I think it will be a budget for this collaborative service will be roughly that amount, which is $225,000. And that's to be divvied up. But in LSD's case, they have to have a vote and agree that they can increase their tax rate in order.
Again, I'm a little bit concerned, even though the amount is not great, is this the beginning of this quasi-legislative body making decisions for us? And I just...
No, and it's a good question,
Yeah.
because a couple of other topics that were raised also spoke about the need for a new person and the need for a new office. And,
Yeah.
But this is the only one that has reached the stage as we're talking about.
Okay.
And
I won't shoot
this
the
is
messenger.
probably one of the items that should be addressed at both the AGM and at the board's meetings.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other? Okay, thank you very much. Move to planning.
So in the month of April, 3 building permits and development permits were issued. This brought our year-to-date at 9. We also received 1 variance request, which will be dealt with at the first meeting in May, and 3 waivers, and 1 application for sidewalk cafe came in April. Year-to-date, there's been, there's a typo there, obviously. There's 9 permits issued at a construction value of $578,000. 1, and of the last 3, 1 was residential, 1 commercial, and 1 institutional. There was no planning review and adjustment committee meeting in April. However, like I say, there is one scheduled for the May 10th, and there will be a Sackville application on that. Other projects that were worked on, Sidewalk Cafe, as you will remember during the last council meeting, there were some slight modifications that were made to the operating procedure, and as a result, staff have compiled, planning staff and engineering staff have compiled those documents and circulated to anybody who had a previous operating Sidewalk Cafe in operation. So I did also receive another renewal today, so that's 2 renewed applications to date. So if there's any questions.
Questions for planning?
Joey's and Ducky's, and Napolé is, I'm waiting on 1 piece of information from them. So the 2 have been renewed, Joey's and Ducky's.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. We move to proclamations. I guess that's me. So proclamation, Recreation and Parks Month in June. Whereas in New Brunswick, we are fortunate to have a variety of recreation and park systems providing countless recreational opportunities for residents and visitors from around the world. And whereas recreation enhances quality of life, balanced living, and lifelong learning, helps people live happier and longer, develops skills and positive self-image in children and youth, develops creativity, and builds healthy bodies and positive lifestyles. And whereas recreational participation builds family unity and social capital, strengthens volunteer and community development, enhances social interaction, creates community pride and vitality, and promotes sensitivity and understanding to cultural diversity. And whereas parks, open space, and trails provide active and passive outdoor recreation opportunities, help maintain clear air and water, and promote stewardship of the natural environment. And whereas recreation, therapeutic recreation, and leisure education are essential to the rehabilitation of individuals who have become ill or disabled or disadvantaged, who have demonstrated antisocial behavior. And whereas the benefits provided by recreation programs, services in parks and open space reduce healthcare and social service costs, serve to boost the economy, economic renewal, and sustainability, enhance property values, attract new business, increase tourism, and curb employee absenteeism. And whereas all levels of government, the voluntary sector, and private enterprise throughout the province participate in the planning, development, and operation of recreation and parks programs, services, and facilities, therefore, I, Mayor John Hyam of the town of Sackville, in recognition of the benefits and values of recreation and parks, do hereby proclaim the month of June as Recreation and Parks Month. We have a second proclamation today. Disability Awareness Week, May 28th to June 3rd. Whereas the municipality of Sackville is committed to assisting citizens with disabilities to participate fully in our community, and whereas many persons living with disabilities face barriers in the areas of employment, access to information, transportation, housing, education, recreation, and other disability-related supports, and whereas we believe that more citizens with disabilities should have the chance to access disability-related supports to improve their opportunities in New Brunswick, and whereas we support the theme, We Need In, now therefore be it known that I, John Hyam, Mayor of the town of Sackville, do hereby request citizens of Sackville to join with our council in recognizing persons with disabilities and their role in our community by the observance of Disability Awareness Week, May 28th to June 3rd, 2017. We move to reports. And top up is me. Council, a couple of things that I wanted you to know about. Last August, I wrote to the president of CN Rail asking for a reply about the flooding issues, particularly in and around the railway. Did not receive any reply from them, and wrote and requesting an actual reply to that and or a meeting with CN soon. And we also offered that that could take place at the FCM in Ottawa. That was a couple of weeks ago. We have not heard anything as yet. A seniors advocacy group made contact with me a couple of times, and we went through what they're doing, which is a Seniors Helping Seniors website. Some of you may have seen that. I relayed a few other things that were going on that are now up on their website as well, in terms of age-friendly and other groups that are talking about questions that may affect seniors. So they're seeking more detailed meetings at some point with people. I would also note that although we've had 2 proclamations, April is also designated Lyme Disease Awareness Month, and we were asked to have another proclamation, but instead I'm just advising council that Lyme disease is real, it's here, and it's increasing in New Brunswick, and we would ask people to seek out information on this topic because it's an awkward disease to get. I did attend the Atlantic Gymnastic Championships here in April, and at the Eastern Canadian Gymnastic Championships this past weekend. Both were held here in town and in conjunction with this weekend with Amherst. Awarded medals at the first, and had an opportunity to talk to the organizers of Eastern Canadian, which was over 600 gymnasts were here, stayed at Mount A, and participated in the events both at our Civic Center and in Sackville. Councillor Finney and saw much of the two places this weekend. Very impressive group. There's probably future Canadian Olympians that were here, and they were effusive of their praise for how our rink and our staff helped them out and participated in an event that they'd not known much about prior to. So all of that I thought was useful for you to hear. We did hold a Schools 2020 session right here, and I introduced and moderated the talks, and we had a panel discussion on education reforms and directions. It was very well attended. I noted already that I attended the Southeast Regional Service Commission Strategic Planning Committee in April. We talked much about what was falling out of that. MLA office has been in contact a couple of times about labor uncertainty and the future for students. Hopefully we'll be able to address something about that soon. We keep hearing about imminent developments for New Brunswick and Nova Scotia for transformer supplies. We keep hearing it's imminent. We keep hearing that this will be awarded, and it will have a real impact on what the future of Maloney might look like. But we still don't hear, we still haven't heard. I was told it was last week for sure. It's not. So it's something is close, and that will change the tone of whatever discussion goes on fairly quickly. Many of us here attended the Poetry Month event here at Town Hall on April 30th. And I also recently moderated the Community Investment and Tax Credit session here on May 3rd. It too was quite well attended. I would suggest most agreed that it's good for the community, but it's best developed outside of the town administration, which was one of the questions I really wanted answered, and I thought we heard that quite clearly. And there were several groups or individuals that really did follow through and are looking at whether they should be using it in their ventures. So that's good. Media, I really only had the one Times and Transcript interview on the Schools 2020 event, and that made the front page, actually. So, any questions on the Mayor's report? Councillor Evans.
Hoping that Councillor Aiken was going to follow up on this, because there was an interesting announcement on campus of funding from the Lyme Disease Foundation for an interdisciplinary research network, I think. And Councillor Aiken would be in a position to speak to it if he wanted. He was one of the faculty members who were involved. Anyway, it's really interesting, and it's so important because it wasn't that long ago before people who were infected with Lyme disease had a really difficult time getting a diagnosis, and then even more difficult time getting appropriate treatment. So the fact that Vet Lloyd, who's sort of been pushing this for a long time, and as I said, she had her day in the limelight earlier this week.
Limelight. Councillor Aiken, you'd like to follow up on that?
Thank you, Worship.
You have the limelight?
Yeah, I hope not. This is a research effort among several departments at Mount Allison that was Vet Lloyd has put together. She's a colleague of mine in the biology department. And just as I don't want to go into all the details of it, but as a warning to the public, we are constantly fighting with infectious disease people and public health about the severity of Lyme disease in New Brunswick. And they have odd criteria for determining whether it's what they call endemic or locally abundant. And these are determined by someone in Winnipeg. But currently the only areas that in New Brunswick considered high risk are Grand Manan and St. John. And we have been recording levels of infected ticks around Sackville higher than both of those. So it's, I would say if you're off in the, generally anywhere a mouse would like to live, a tick would like to live. And if you're walking in the woods or through brush, check yourself very carefully. The very youngest of the ticks are look like pepper, so they're quite small. And the big ones, as you get a big fat one fully engorged, you may be in trouble. But those, and on your pets as well. And if you find a tick, by all means send it to the biology department in Mount A so we can test it for the presence of the Lyme disease bacteria.
Thank you. Thank you. Excellent. Thanks for filling that up. And that's it. Any other questions for Mayor's report? No? We'll move on to the CAO report.
Thank you, Worship. CAO reports on page 15 in the package, and just wanted to indicate once again the past month is really busy on a number of, all the departments have been active in terms of preparing and programs and services upcoming both in the spring and for the summer. A lot of details are in their report, so I won't go into them, but I'm sure that if there's any questions anyone has, they'll certainly have that opportunity to ask when the reports are provided. We also, I will mention the fact, though, that we did have a public information session facilitated by two of our managers on the Lawrence Street and the upgrade, and so it was well attended. There was a lot of information provided and a good number of questions were asked as well, so I thought that was a very informative session, and congrats to our staff and doing a great job on hosting that. And a good bit of time spent this past month too dealing with the labor relations situation that we have, and most recently this past Friday where there was a mediation between the parties, and I think it's known on the street at least that the two negotiating teams did reach a tentative settlement, and we're looking to review that with respective parties to see whether or not both parties would be prepared to ratify the agreement. So certainly optimistic that both parties will be able to reach that settlement, and once they've talked to it, we'll be back to council with a motion in due course. Again, assuming the support for the agreement is there. So with that, that's my report, unless there's any further questions anyone in the council has.
No, hearing none. We'll move on to finance and admin. Councillor Aiken, I believe that's you tonight.
Yes. Thank you, Worship. I move that council accept the bills and payrolls for the month of April 2017 as follows. General Government, $284,773.57. General Capital, 0. Utility Government, $88,073.20. Utility Capital, $926.39. And salaries, $224,052.44.
Moved by Councillor Aiken, seconded by Councillor Finney. Question?
Question.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion is carried.
And, yep, the report from Finance. The financial statements are on pages 19 to 22 and are included to the end of April. We're a third of the way through 2017. We have no major anomalies. Some lines are above and some below what in a particular month, but this will even out over time. The auditors have been in to review the books for the town, and the audit will be presented to the June 5th discussion group of council with the auditors present, and we'll get draft copies of that before the meeting. We want to proceed with our asset management plan. It's required to be done and submitted to the province by the end of this year, December 31st, so we can keep getting our gas tax funding. We have to do this in line with the rules and regulations and direction of the province. Unfortunately, such rules, regulations, and direction have not been provided. So we're going ahead anyway, and I have a motion at the end of this to take on a group that we have been working with. They are prepared to make any adjustments to, if we do get some direction from the province, they're prepared to make adjustments to our plan for no extra cost. The water billing for the January to March went out April 13th with a billing date, or due date of May 15th, and this included increased rates we voted on a few months ago. Dog tags were due on March 31st, and there's now a $20 late penalty. As of the end of April, we were 23 dogs short of what was registered last year. We have no idea why. They do go. And finally, the bylaw enforcement and animal control statistics are on pages 23 and 24 respectively, with our usual collection of recalcitrant species. And with that, I will ask for any questions, which I'll immediately turn over to Mr. Beal.
Okay,
I have a motion.
motion.
I move that council approve the development of an asset management plan for the town of Sackville as required under the GTF agreement and authorize the hiring of Public Sector Digest Incorporated to create the plan at a price of $18,500 plus HST.
Moved by Councillor Aiken. Second by Councillor Evans. Councillor Finney.
Can I ask who they are? Who are they? Where are they from?
Mr. Ack, or
Yes, thank you, Councillor Finney. They're out of London, Ontario. They're the same company that we purchased the fixed asset software from. Part of the original proposal included the fixed asset software, followed up by the asset management plan. So the fixed asset software we implemented in 2016 so that we could monitor and track our own fixed assets. That was followed up with a recommendation that we proceed with the asset management plan in 2017 so that we spread the expenses out over 2 budget years. The asset management plan, their original proposal, this proposal is $1,000 cheaper than the original proposal because after we had entered all our fixed assets into the system, provided the necessary reports, they reviewed the data, and it was we had better data than what they originally proposed they would be able to create the plan for. They have done a number of plans and across Canada, 130 I think to date now. Miramichi was their first asset management plan in New Brunswick, and I just got confirmation late last week that they have just signed on the City of St. John and the City of Campbellton to do their asset management plans as well. So they are going to be doing a lot of asset management plans in New Brunswick as well.
other questions? Everybody realizes GTF is gas tax funding. Question? All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, Councillor Aiken. Move on to tourism and business development. I guess we're back to you, Mr. Councillor Aiken.
Thank you, Your Worship. The report for our tourism and business development is found on pages 25, 26, and 27. We had a meeting on April 27th, and this report stems from that meeting. The department hosted a food safety and food handling workshop on April 29th, and it was a sold-out meeting with 30 people attending. Our Buy Local online survey closed on March 31st, and the meeting was held with Renaissance, the Chamber, and then Sackville Commons on April 12th to develop a Buy Local campaign. The Community Economic Development Corporation meeting took place May 3rd in council chambers here. Several of us were in attendance at that. In short, for those that don't know, the CEDC is just essentially a way of investing in community enterprises and getting a 50% tax credit on your investment. There's lots more rules around it, but I won't go into them. Staff met with Gerard Belvo and Chuck Steves about this regional tourism plan that we've already talked about in quite a bit of detail, so I won't add to that. And the manager, along with Deputy Mayor O'Neill, Councillor Tower, and Ray Freilich, Lynn Griggs, assisted the Saltscapes Expo in Halifax at the end of April. And we handed out more than 1,000 Sackville visitor guides, and apparently every visitor guide gets you 2 ginger snaps, so a couple thousand ginger snaps. The manager also attended several meetings surrounding tourism in the Bay of Fundy, and one was hosted by the Provincial Department of Tourism, and there's also one further down the page of the Fundy Biosphere getting involved in this sort of thing. So there's several, at least 3, I believe, Ron, organizations now trying to promote tourism in the Fundy area, and I think they're looking to sort of coordinate between them. And I think I'll just leave you to read the rest of the report, and I have a motion at the, if there are no questions.
Questions for Councillor Aiken? Councillor Black?
I just have one. For the Fundy Biosphere, it said, this is an asset we should take more advantage of, and we'll be working to do so in the near future. Why this one specifically instead of some of the other meetings that you've attended?
Sorry, I was being silent. I apologize. No, that's okay. Thank you, Councillor Black. I think what I meant by that was that they're all evolving, but this is one that has been in existence for quite a long time, and it's right here. We're in it, and we don't do much to promote it in terms of featuring it on our website or in our brochures and that sort of thing. And they have just started to step up to kind of connect with the local communities as well to try to get us onto their material. So I think there's a bit of a awareness and partnership that's developing that wasn't there before. So.
Any other question? Councillor Aiken.
Thank you, Worship. I move the council authorize the painting of the Sackville Visitor Information Center to Windy Marsh Painting and Taping Incorporated in the amount of $6,785, HST included.
Moved by Councillor Aiken, seconded by Deputy Mayor O'Neill. And do you want to speak to it? Or? Councillor Evans?
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate what happened at the discussion meeting where we got 2 bids, and this was by far the lower of the 2 bids. And we often are disappointed with how expensive things are, and the only way we can find out what a fair price is to get lots of bids. So I believe 5 tenders were picked up. We only got 2 bids, but this was, I think, half or something the previous bid. So we're doing the best we can. This seems like a really good deal, so I'm happy to speak in favor of it.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Any other question? Those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, Councillor Aiken. Is that it? Okay. Move on to public property and facilities. And are you able to speak, Councillor Philly?
Yes, Your Worship. I'm going to pass it over to Mr. Acton. Usually Michael does this, and I didn't prepare because I figured he would be here. So I'm going to ask Mr. Acton to do the report for us, please.
Thank you, Councillor Finney. The Public Properties and Facilities Report can be found on page 28, 29, and 30 of the report. I'll try to just go through and highlight a few things just quickly. This is definitely behind us, but the month of April did see a few snow events, a little bit of sanding and salting at the first part of the month, and as I said, that's behind us now. The town has partnered up with the Rotary Club to replace the booster pump, and that was in my last month's report, but we continued the construction of that. And you probably wonder, well, I haven't seen any activity, but the construction is actually being done at our Public Works facilities, and then we're going to then take the parts and pieces out on site and take the old booster pump out of there, which is in need of replacement, and place a new concrete pad and then the new building on it. That's going to take place probably in a week's time, and I just wanted to notify the public that unfortunately to do that we need to take booster pump out of service for a short period of time while we do that work. And as I said, it's likely going to start next week, weather dependent, of course. Few other just operational things. Pothole machine has been out and doing some hot patch with the hot patch machine, filling some potholes. And I will say that the patchers are going to be in town this week to start. So that'll be good news. The street sweeper has been going on a fairly steady basis. We've been doing some driveway culverts that we've had requested over the last month or so. The month of April as well, the Public Works staff have put out bike racks, park benches. There's a few more to go out. We'll continue to work on that. Spring cleanup due to the winter snow clearing, repairing near sidewalks and on sides of streets is going to be ongoing over the next month or so. Mechanics have been busy, again, decommissioning some of our equipment from the winter operations and getting equipment ready for the summer, spring/summer operations, mowing machines, whippersnippers, and so on. On our utility side, utility department continue to work away at the water meters. Again, there's several of them that need replacement. That, again, there's several that didn't read through the last meter reading, and they're working on replacing them and fixing MXUs and so on. They also finished the repairs of the Squire Street lift station, which we had a suction line that failed and we had to renew that, so that's been completed. And again, our regular monitoring of our water and wastewater sampling program. On the engineering side, again, we worked with the Planning Commission to get the necessary permits together that allows us to demolish the old barn structure that sits up at the Beach Hill Park. It's an old barn that's been there for many years, and it's deteriorated, it's falling down, and we're scared that somebody could go inside and it could collapse on them. So we've got the necessary permits, and once the conditions are right up there, we'll be going up and demolishing that building. So I just wanted you to be aware of that. The CAO mentioned an open house, so just wanted to, we held an open house on April the 11th, and again, was well attended. And we had several members of the public and members of council, a lot of staff, and of course our consultant, Crandall Engineering. The engineering department continues to work with Crandall Engineering on the Lawrence Street Reconstruction Storm Mitigation Project, Phase 1. Again, there were 2 tenders that were issued on April the 21st for that. Tender number 2017-02, 2017-03, and they're actually scheduled to close this week. One other item that the engineering department worked on was we issued a tender for one used articulating boom lift on the March 31st, and it closed on April the 19th. We received 2 tenders upon the closing. The tenders were evaluated and presented to council last Monday night, May the 1st, at their discussion group, and a recommendation was brought forward, and I believe there's a motion coming tonight on that. On the parks and facility side, the Tantamara Veterans Memorial Civic Center, the mayor had mentioned a couple gymnastic events that were held there, one on April the 21st, 22nd, and again this past weekend. And we've got a maritime conference coming up later in May as well. Lots of space available if anybody wants to rent space at the Civic Center. On the park side, municipal parks, the washrooms at Bill Johnson as well as Lillis Park are now open for the season. Public Works had worked on constructing a new outhouse as part of the Beach Hill Park improvements, and that outhouse has now been installed up at Beach Hill Park. And we've been working with District 2 to make some revisions to the reciprocal agreement, and that will be brought forward to council at a future meeting. And the park staff, again, have been working daily in the parks, cleaning up from winter and getting the parks in tip-top shape for the spring and summer season. That's our report, Your Worship. Be happy to answer any questions.
Question, Councillor Butcher.
Thank you. I had a parent mention to me today that they were disappointed that the washrooms were not opened at Bill Johnstone Park yesterday, and I found that odd. Was the door sticking, or because you stated that it's now opened for the season, so they were mistaken, obviously, or?
Thank you, Councillor Butcher. I was not aware of that. I'll look into it. I know we've had them tried. There's a way you can lock them so that go in, lock it, and go out, and the door stays locked. That may have happened. I'm not sure, but we can check into that. But they are open for the season, unless they needed major cleaning from the weekend, which I doubt, because I know our custodial staff were by there today, and no one mentioned anything to that nature. So I'll check into that and find out.
Councillor Evans.
Yeah, I just have 3 points. The first one is I want to commend you and your staff for the presentation on Lawrence Street. I was really impressed. All the questions, there were good questions from the public. They were all answered fully and professionally, and I was very favorably impressed. Speaking of favorably impressed, everybody should go to the discussion meetings, because We're going to have a motion coming up soon, and I'm going to be happy to speak in favor of it because it was explained so well why clearly this was the way to proceed. So I want to commend you on that, and I'm going to ask you to repeat it a little bit when it comes up to the motion about why. And I do want to ask you if you could explain to the public what you explained to me last week about the clock that hasn't been working for so long in Bill Johnstone Park.
Thank you, Councillor Irvin. Yeah, the reason the clock is the clock's standing still is that the clock is old, as we're all aware, and parts are not readily available. So we had to special order some parts, motor parts inside, and they've been difficult to get our hands on. But they are on their way, and we hope to have that clock fixed very soon.
Okay, I would note that if you really want to catch the full text of Mr. Acton's speech at the discussion, you can get that on our website now. The audio is loaded on the website, and so you may get a Reader's Digest version in a minute, but if you want the whole thing, you can get it online. Are there any other questions on the? No?
Motion, Your Worship. I move the council award tender number 2017-10. One, used articulating boom lift to Atlantic Cat Rental, Hewitt Rentals Incorporated, Moncton, New Brunswick, in the amount of $45,885, HST included.
Moved by Councillor Finney, seconded by Councillor Aiken. Councillor Evans?
Yeah, I just want Dwayne to summarize what he said a week ago tonight. No, just explaining why this, I mean, my question to him then was, this is a used piece of equipment. When we're buying new stuff, it's easy to compare. They're comparable. But this, I wanted to know how we were sure, as councillors, that this was the recommended piece of equipment. So, over to you.
Thank you again, Councillor Evans. So we did in the tender, I guess in the tender process, putting the tender together, somewhat similar to any other piece of equipment, we determined what our requirements were. So once we've determined what our, I guess our minimum requirements were for our machine, we then put together a criteria on how we were going to evaluate each piece of equipment, which was based on hours of the machine, years of the age of the machine, cost of the machine, delivery of the machine, the warranty of the machine, and did it meet all the minimum specifications. So we had a way of not only making sure that we received the machine we had, but how to differentiate between one machine and the other, meeting our minimum specs. And again, it turned out for this particular evaluation that not only was the low bid, but it was also the newest machine. It had the least amount of hours, and again, both machines all met our minimum requirements. So that was the way we evaluated and determined how to purchase a used articulating boom.
Councillor Evans?
And I'm just going to have you explain how this will pay for itself, because essentially we've been renting equipment to have this functionality in the past, and we've paid approximately a certain amount per year. And
Yep. Yeah, I'd be happy to. In regards to a boom, if we rent a boom today, we depending on how long we rent it, but typically we rent it for a week rental. We pay anywhere from $1,500 to $2,000 to rent a boom, and we do this quite frequently. We now require them to put the banners up, and then in second week of June, we then put the flowers up, and then we have to do other things around town, such as clean windows here. The Civic Center beams need to be cleaned, so there's another rental there. When you start adding all these rentals up throughout the year, we're renting it 6-8 times at $2,000 a piece. And then years ago, we used to hire somebody to do it. That cost us even more, around $2,400 or $2,500 every time we rented it. So quickly, you can add up how quickly this payback will be for this boom vehicle, which is, again, those are just some of the things that we regularly rent something for. There'll be a lot more use out there, changing lights at the ball field, changing lights at the Civic Center, where we weren't able to do that before. We didn't have the piece of equipment, so we can use it for that as well. Thank you.
Any other? Question? Those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, Councillor Finney. Councillor Butcher, Recreation Programs and Events.
Thank you, Your Worship. Our meeting notes can be found on page 31 and 32. The rec programs and events liaison council met on April 24th. And our big news is that the department was successful in attaining Canada 150 grant. So we will be hosting a street chalk art festival, drum roll please, in the summer of 2017. So more details will be following as they fall into place, but that's on for the summer. June is Recreation and Parks Month, as we heard earlier, and we're going to be having upcoming Bring Your Grandparents to the Park and Park Music Jamboree events. Those are events that our high school co-op student Thomas Campbell is looking after. And we're going to be hosting a orientation session at 6:30 on May 15th at Beach Hill Park, and it's open to the whole family. And you can register on the Sackville.com page and the programming page. And April was Poetry Month, as was said. Over 600 students in the Tantramar area were exposed to poetry through the dedication of several local poet volunteers. And a special thank you goes out to our Poet Laureate, Marilyn Lurch, for all her hard work again this year. Coming up very soon, May 10th, is Operation Beautification. That's the event that's replacing the old Clean Sweep program. And local businesses and organizations have been able to sign up for this, and we've had many sign up to take part. If any others would like to, they're welcome to. They'll be getting free clear and blue bags available to be picked up at Town Hall from 8:30 until 6:30 on May 10th. And that will hopefully maximize the number of people who can take part. The department is still working with the Drew Nursing Home to purchase an accessible bicycle. Staff is now waiting on word from the province concerning funding before presenting a motion. And we are still accepting nominations for the 2017 Arts Wall Induction Ceremony. Nomination forms can be found online at sackville.com. And we are also accepting nominations for the Volunteer Recognition Night. So we're looking to recognize contributions of community members who've been active volunteers for 10, 25, or 50 or more years. And new this year, we have added a Titan Community Achievement Award, which will recognize a TRHS graduate who has actively volunteered in school and the community during their time in the public school system. And nominations, the forms are available on sackville.com as well. And that is my report, and I have a motion. No, would you like to speak to that, Councillor Evans?
Well, perhaps I should. I issued a challenge to my fellow councillors, and two of the new ones responded and acquitted themselves well. It was a well-attended event, and I'm proud of you.
Councillor Butcher.
Well, I didn't need you to encourage me to go because I do love poetry, but it was a lot of fun. It was even more fun than I thought it would be. So, motion? We ready for that? So I move that council authorize the temporary closure of York Street from Lansdowne Street to Main Street on July 22nd, 2017 from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. to accommodate an antique car show.
Moved by Councillor Butcher. Seconded by Councillor Aiken. Anyone wish to speak to it?
I could, maybe. And I'd just like to mention that this is tentative on Lawrence Street being passable during that time frame, and if it can't be, then the antique car show will be moved up. Is that correct, Matt? No? We're sure?
I'll ask Mr. Pratt to give us the
Good
background,
idea.
please.
Thank you, Your Worship. No, we originally were going to present a motion to close Bridge Street, but because of the uncertainty around Lawrence Street reconstruction, we've moved the motion up to York Street. And Mr. Gagnon, the organizer, is quite pleased with that. So.
We had a good discussion at the discussion. Is there any other comments or questions on it? No? Question? All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. We move to public safety. Who's starting?
I will do the fire department, your worship.
Okay, thank you.
Find it here. Supposed to be- I've got the wrong one. Tell me where it is, Bill.
33,
Just bear with me, folks.
page 33.
No, it's page 33. Yeah. If I want the digital, no, I lose it. Okay, here we go. Fire department. The fire and rescue responded to 11 calls of service in April, 2 commercial fires, 2 calls for assistance from the RCMP, 2 grass fires, 1 rubbish fire, 1 kitchen fire, 1 call for assistance on Silver Lake, 1 motor vehicle collision, and 1 house fire. So the total number of calls for service in April was exactly the same as back in April, this year as last year in April 2016. The training sessions took place during the month. They also did a pre-planning tour of our local hospital and station equipment checks. They also had several firefighters attend a 2-day first aid CPR training here in the station. Firefighters held their annual muscular dystrophy boot drive on April the 8th from 9 until 1. They were really happy with that event. It was very successful, and they raised over $5,000 from money that was dropped in their boots. So that's pretty awesome. Shows good support for our department. And they also extend a sincere thanks to the community for their attendance at their pancake breakfast. And the fire chief also reminds us that the fire prevention bylaw, rubbish fires strictly prohibited within town limits. And he continues to remind us that we should be prepared for at least 72 hours with our emergency kits. And the big thing tonight is that there will be a motion coming that as our 2016 capital projects awards tender number 2017-09 for it's a pumper tanker. And I will be reading the motion for that, if I may. I move that council award tender number 2017-09 for 1 new pumper tanker unit to Metal Fab Limited, Centerville, New Brunswick, in the amount of $518,106.80 plus HST included, with the understanding that approximately $25,000 will be allocated within the 2018 budget.
Moved by Deputy Mayor O'Neill. Seconded by Councillor Aiken.
And perhaps we could ask Deputy Chief Mike if he'd like to speak on it? Or whichever.
Mr. Green?
Yeah, we've been about probably a year and a half in the making of this tender, like trying to come up with what we figure we really needed for the allotment of the water. We are losing the big tanker that they have in River Hibbert, which is one that we've used quite a bit, which holds a lot of water. It was 4,000 gallons, and our new one's going to be 2,500. So this will be better suited our community as well as the surrounding communities as well. And when we first started the process, it was a little bit cheaper. Then with the exchange on the dollar, the price of vehicles and price of equipment and stuff has gone up substantially. So I guess it's now or never, I guess, if we're going to purchase a new one. It's not going to get any cheaper, I guess. So we spent almost a year in the designing of this truck, and we finally come up with what we figure will work for us.
And maybe Mr. Beal could talk about the shortfall and how that's being handled.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. The 2 tenders that were received, of course, the lowest, as had previously been indicated, did not meet specifications. So the tender that's being awarded tonight does come in over budget of approximately $70,000. So what how we've proposed to fund that is, of course, there's $400,000 that's been allocated. There's $34,000 in unused from other 2016 capital projects. The fire department has come forward with 10,000 from their 2017 capital projects out of the 34,000 that was approved, so approximately 25% of their capital that was approved in 2017. And the remainder, as stated in the motion, will have to be budgeted for during the 2018 capital budget, either through capital out of revenue or through the sale of assets, but ultimately it will come forward through capital out of revenue allocation.
Okay, that was consistent with what we heard at discussion. Are there any questions or good clarity? So, question? All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion is carried. Councillor Black, I believe you're.
Thank you, Your Worship. The first thing I want to say is I want to apologize to Chief Bowser and Sergeant LeBlanc for not being at the Liaison Council meeting May 4th. I actually showed up, I think, 2 Thursdays before that, expecting a liaison meeting, and that never actually happened. Anyway, so the police services report is on page 34. The RCMP members had a busy month of April with 141 calls for service, 17 check stops in Sackville during this period, 3 collisions reported in Sackville town limits, and there were no injuries reported. They had numerous mental health files, including 1 suicide of a Mount Allison student that was pretty shocking to the town and the department. Noise complaints for loud music were down from last month, and property crimes were still going down, which is good news. The RCMP members continue to do key street checks and offender monitoring. The CPO report, which is always lengthy, is on page 35 and 36 of the agenda. He is still working on a safe plan for Mount Allison University. With the schools in the area, he attends Tantramar Regional High School every day for regular visits, and did a full day of presentations on April 5th for mental health awareness. And Marshview and Salem, he attended a few times within the month to socialize with students. Within the community, he continues to keep usual visits for hospital and addiction services and the diversion committee. He continues to work with MAD regularly in town, and he's also working with Foodland to organize a bike rodeo to be held in June. As far as committees, he's involved with Crime Stoppers, Block Parent, Link Program Committee, which is the helping tree in the Tantramar area, Community Health Advisory Committee for Marshview, Youth and Adult Diversion Committee, Access to Mental Health with Mount Allison, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, Teens Against Drug Driving. This guy is a superhero in town.
Involved in community partnerships. Couldn't even mention.
As with training and administrative duties, he has 11 active youth files at Tantramar, where he spends a majority of his time. This month there was stuff like fighting and threats, assaulting students, harassing text messages, libel, dangerous vehicle driving, among other things that he is taking care of. And in the month, he also had 13 presentations and workshops within the community and the schools as well. And that's my report.
Any questions? Councillor Finney?
Andrew, the 17 check stops in Sackville during this period, does that mean there was actually people who may have been stopped and charged as well, or is those they just check? They're just doing a check?
I'm not sure, actually. I can't answer that question. I would imagine that it would be that they weren't necessarily charged, that it was just a check stop, but I'm not sure.
The reason I ask is because I saw them within the last 2 weeks, and they've been nailing people left and right for cell phones and texting and everything, and I want to praise them, and please give them my thanks for doing so. Long overdue. There's many more out there that still need to be caught and charged. Some of them have been caught, and they continue to do it. I think the fines needs to be increased and really, really come on to them heavy. Nova Scotia does it, and I think they do a great job, and they're doing a great job here too. Thank you.
Councillor Black? No? Any other? Maybe you could just comment maybe it's not fair, that we will have a annual do you want to comment on that?
Go ahead.
That on a regular basis, the RCMP provides an annual discussion over what they have done and what their priorities are regionally, and they seek input on what are the priorities for the upcoming year should be locally. That'll be a public session, which the date is to be set, although we're hoping it'll be in the next couple of weeks, a month or so, in order that we can plan for next year and they can plan as well. Okay? No motion, right? No? Okay, thank you very much. We'll move to item H, policy bylaw. Which ones, did you reciprocate or?
That's me.
All right. Councilor Black.
I think this might be my first. I think Councilor Evans has done all of these before me. The policy bylaw liaison meeting was held on April 20th. Staff continue to review all of Town of Sackville policies, and 2 policies were brought forward for review and discussion. Policy number 2007-07, in-charge management policy, is covered off in bylaw number 250, the CAO bylaw, under section 5.2, which states, in the event of temporary absence or disability, the chief administrative officer may designate a senior employee of the town to perform the duties of the chief administrative officer during that absence, and shall file a letter with the mayor indicating that such action has been taken. This bylaw would supersede the old policy number 2007-07. The second policy is number 03-99, the charitable donations, which has been in place since 1999 and is now outdated with the current grant policy and criteria, which is now in place. Policy number 2007-07, in-charge management policy, and policy number 03-99, charitable donations, will be brought forward tonight for the regular council meeting to consider passing motions to revoke these 2 policies.
Any questions on the report? None? Move to motions?
I move that council authorize the repeal of policy number 2007-07, in-charge management policy.
Moved by Councillor Black, seconded by Councillor Evans. Councillor Finney.
I just want to say I'll be voting against this policy because I think the policy that's in place now is really good because of the fact it's already tells exactly who's in charge. And when I look at exactly the list that is there, the number, those people, as a matter of fact, fall right in line for the number of people, for those people that have been here the longest. For instance, it's the treasurer, then the clerk, then I believe it would be Mr. Acton, Public Works and Engineering, and then, of course, be Community Development Economic. Those people, as a matter of fact, for instance, I look at it, Mr. Beal has done that on a number of occasions, and as a matter of fact, he's probably got more knowledge about everything that's been going on with his 25 years here. And so I think that actually that policy, I would like to commend actually the council at that time for putting in place, just in case something does happen where the CAO is unable to turn around and put someone in place. We will know automatically who's going to be in charge. And I think that's a good thing, as a matter of fact. It's already there, it's not hurting anything, and I think it's really well written and put in place for a good reason, so.
Councillor Philly raises the question, which is that the previous one had an automatic if the CAO was unable to file the letter. Is there a comment on that? Is there policy committee talk about that? Bylaw?
What it says now is the CAO has to delegate. I mean, what it says in that policy, right? So it doesn't, I mean, I don't have to get into it. We had a discussion at the discussion meeting. Councillor Finney is entitled to his opinion. I think that the clerk's office reviewed this stuff, has decided that this is not required because of our current bylaw. I support that.
Councillor Black?
Yeah, I would say the same thing. We did I guess I asked the question at that policy meeting. I said, no, there's a clear list of who would who would take over, and if that person couldn't do it, then the next and the next. And I asked, is that the way that it would work? It was determined that the CAO would delegate to whoever he felt might need to fill a position. If it was something involving public works, then Dwayne would step in. If it was somebody who, if it was involving payroll or personnel, then Mr. Beal would step in. Anyway, there'd be delegation that would be assigned for duties that were required.
Any other comments or questions? Councillor Aiken?
I don't think either answer addresses the substance of Councillor Finney's question, which was, what if the CEO is unable to delegate? And, you know, is there a provision for that?
Anybody on the CAO, please?
I believe in the CAO bylaw, it does say the council might, by resolution, may rescind, amend, or vary the appointments as authorized in the bylaw. So I think the permission, that authority would rest with council in the event that the CAO is not able to carry out the action as is asked. I think you still have that within the bylaw. I think the act would still be there too, but I haven't checked the act for that specific question.
Councillor Finney.
I was just going to say, the reason I think it's a good policy is because we don't have to turn around and start meeting. There's already going to be a list of who's going to be taking over in charge. The people, for instance, when we turn around and say, well, if it's a financial thing, Michael should be in charge, or if it's a public works, it should be Dwayne. We already know that these people work quite well together as it is. But so with this list in place, people who already know out there exactly about this policy, they know who to contact in case the CAO is unable to turn around and designate anybody. So the thing is, and so will council. Council will know who's going to be in charge. And so that the way it saves a lot of time, and people know exactly who to go to in case that does happen. And that's why I think it's a great policy.
Okay. Any other question? Any other comments? So I'll call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
All right, let's do this by hand. Those in favor? Councillors Butcher, Black, and Evans. Those opposed? Councillors Finney, Aiken, and Deputy Mayor O'Neill. Does that mean I have to vote? I will vote in favor. I understand and I appreciate the point. I'm a little concerned about that in terms of timing, but I do think that at this point we will remove the old one, and perhaps we should be looking at asking the policy committee to take a look at the drafting of that second one. Otherwise, I will vote in favor. So motion is approved, and over to you.
I move that council authorize the repeal of policy number 03-99, charitable donations policy.
Moved by Councillor Black, seconded by Councillor Evans. And any context, you've described it in the discussion, you described it again. Any other context? Councillor Black?
Just once again, that with the new grant policy that we have in place for the town, the old charitable donation policy is superseded by.
Question? All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Councillor Finney? Motion is approved. Councillor Finney is a negative on that. Thank you. We move to personnel. Who is that? Is that Councillor Evans or O'Neill? Pardon me? Councillor Evans.
have a short one, so I got to stall for time. Following is an overview of the recent highlights and initiatives in the month of April. Council liaison members for personnel met on April 27th. As of the last pay period in April, there were 38 permanent employees and 4 temporary employees, including crossing guards and recreation maintenance. And what it says here is in terms of labor relations, town and local union met on May 5th with the mediator in our attempt to reach an agreement on a revised collective agreement. And as the CIO alluded to earlier, a tentative agreement is being recommended by the negotiating teams to each party. So I am pleased that I can update the report thusly.
Any questions for Councillor Evans? Yep, thank you. Move on to Corporate Affairs and Strategic Development. Councillor Butcher.
Thank you. So our liaison group met on March 22nd, and our meeting notes are found on page 43 and to the end of the package. So some highlights. We continue to assist the Engineering and Public Works Department with the Lawrence Street Stormwater Mitigation Project, and there was an information session on Phase 1 on April 11th, as was mentioned earlier, and we will be holding a similar session on Phase 2 later on when it's closer to that starting to roll out. And staff continues to meet with individuals and businesses, including the Legion, to discuss the project. Staff has been working with Verdi, is that how it's said? Verdis, thank you, Verdis Design, to prepare a technical drawing regarding the beautification improvements for exit 506. So the drawing will help define the scope of work and determine what should be planted, what can be planted in that area, so that quotations can be obtained. And the on-site meeting happened on May 3rd, and the drawing will be finalized shortly. And staff have advised the local citizens group of the plans, and they'll be meeting with several members of the group prior to obtaining quotations once the technical drawings and the scope of the work are prepared. Staff has reached out to several university towns to arrange best practices visits. They've been done in the past with the town of Wolfville and Acadia University, and the town of Brunswick, Maine, with the Bowdoin College, and these visits have been really beneficial to share information and ideas and to expand networking opportunities. Staff met with the chair of Sappy Fest Music Festival and the new creative director to discuss the festival plans for 2017, and there will be a motion coming up in regards to that. The staff has, upon the adoption of the terms of reference for the Waterfowl Park Advisory Committee, staff has been working with the chair of the committee to formalize the committee members' positions. So they're expecting to have a list of volunteers and community partner representatives, including Mount A, Canadian Wildlife Services, Ducks Unlimited, for council to consider and subsequently make the necessary appointments. And staff was pleased to recently meet with local representatives of the All-Terrain Vehicle Federation to discuss their plans for our area. And they will be expecting to receive additional information in the upcoming weeks, which will then be presented to council. And the Community Partnership Working Group met on May 2nd. And the group used the meeting to discuss the recent door-to-door events that focused on the elevated levels of noise complaints and the survey that we did the draw for this evening. The Heritage Board met on April 13th, and they discussed applications for 1014 York Street and reviewed proposed new criteria for the Heritage Grants, the latest version of the draft for the new standard operating procedure and the RTFR appeal. And the board is scheduled to meet again on May 16th. And that's the report. And as I said, I have a motion.
Questions on the report? Deputy Mayor O'Neill?
Going back to the design and so on for beautification out on exit 506, somewhere along the line I heard that there was money available for beautification and so on along the highway for municipalities or whatever. Is anybody aware of that? Supposed to be funding out there from the provincial and federal, I believe. I know there's a whack of money being spent on the highways out around the other side of Moncton or just on the outskirts there. So I wondered whether there was something there that we might tap into.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor O'Neill. I'm certainly not aware of any funding for that type of work, but it's certainly something we can look into. The only thing that would come to mind would be maybe Communities in Bloom funding or something similar, but in any event, we can touch base with some of the municipalities perhaps that are doing some work and see if they've inquired to see if any funding's available.
It ties in with 150 plus, so whatever.
Councillor Aiken?
Thank you, Worship. Again, about the 506 area, has there been any effort to engage local gardeners in helping to decide what should go there, planning it and so on?
Thanks, Councillor. Not at this point. I guess what we need to do is be able to produce something where we can then go out and get local companies to bid, so that way we're being consistent with the work that we're looking to do. We've touched base with the, I guess, chair or head of the local group whose approach is originally, and we've indicated what our process is, who we've engaged, and the timing of when we'll be sitting down with them. So we're waiting for, I guess, a technical drawing to be prepared, at which time we'll sit down with them. But to answer your question, no, we haven't reached out to local gardeners.
Okay, given that our recently approved strategic plan had a big section in it on volunteering, I would think this would be an ideal thing to do, because these are people that have good knowledge of local conditions for growing things. And I wasn't talking about local companies, but just simply local volunteers. And I think that would be something to do, just help engage, sort of get some community engagement in the whole process, aside from just, going out and getting a consultant of some sort.
I guess I'm not sure if Dwayne has anything to add, but I guess one thing we haven't thought of doing that. We typically don't go out to volunteers, and we're looking to put any tenders or requests for proposals or any type of request for quotations out for public bidding. But Dwayne and I can touch base in the morning and see if there's some way that perhaps on the local group who's going to be sitting in to review the technical drawing, that perhaps some of them have a green thumb.
Councillor Aiken, you have a follow-up, or is?
Yeah, just a bit of historical perspective. The 504 plantings and so on, the whole design was done completely by a group of volunteers. So.
There was a garden club at that time, wasn't
Yep.
there? Yeah. Is there still one, or are you aware?
No.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Have a motion?
I move that council approve the following for the Sappy Fest Contemporary Arts Festival: to grant the temporary closure of Bridge Street from Lawrence Street to Main Street, or the temporary closure of York Street from Lansdowne Street to Main Street on Thursday, August 3rd, 2017, beginning at 8 p.m. until Monday, August 7th, 2017 at 12 noon, in order to facilitate the use of a tent for events during the festival. And to waive the rental of town-owned property such as tables, chairs, picnic tables, and other similar items from the Tantramar Veterans Memorial Civic Center to Sappy Fest from August 3rd, 2017 to August 7th, 2017, with the understanding that Sappy Fest will be responsible for lost or damaged equipment. And to grant a time exemption from 11 p.m. to 12 midnight on Friday, August 4th, 2017, and Saturday, August 5th, 2017, and Sunday, August 6th, 2017, as per bylaw number 182, the Town of Sackville Noise Bylaw, Section 5, and that council grant permission for the Sappy Fest Contemporary Arts Festival to operate a beer garden in a secured area on Bridge Street or York Street on Friday, August 4th, 2017, Saturday, August 5th, 2017, and Sunday, August 6th, 2017, subject to provincial liquor and safety laws, and obtaining liability insurance in the amount of $2 million, naming the town of Sackville as co-insured.
Moved by Councillor Butcher, seconded by Councillor Black. Any commentary? We note, when we had a presentation at the discussion meeting, and these were all, other than having an alternative between York and Bridge, these were all pretty standard. Sappy-Fest in their 11th, 12th year, and these are all items that we've been talking about throughout those times, so. Any question? All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Next item is new business. There was no new business, so we can, with that, we go to question period. Mr. Wark.
It's not often we get a situation in which council is tied on a vote and the mayor breaks the tie, so I just wanted to be sure I understand the issue here. Bylaw number 250 is now superseding the older policy. When was 250 passed?
Do we have
Is
that?
it new? Or was it just the fact that there was a conflict found on the books?
Councillor Evans, you were on the committee?
Yeah. The clerk's office regularly goes through our policies and bylaws looking for things like this, and it was discovered that this was still on the books, and it was felt by the majority of people at the discussion meeting that it was no longer necessary, that it was superseded by this other one. So the bylaw is newer. The bylaw was amended, and I think what we did, it has a new number, so we replaced the old CAO bylaw with this CAO bylaw a couple of years ago, whereas this policy dates from, I think it was 2007. So that it was the latter of your two choices. It was discovered by the clerk's office that, because it was debatable, I don't say that it was no longer necessary, it was felt by the majority that it was no longer necessary, but that's the order in which things happened.
And what happens if the CAO is unable to designate a replacement?
And when we discussed that policy bylaw, and I'll let the CAO speak to it if you want, because he essentially said that, is that, and this is with no disrespect to the CAO, but the day-to-day operations of the town take place by staff under his supervision. And so it would only be the sorts of things that the CAO has to do on a time-sensitive basis that would have to get dealt with. So the rest of our competent staff would continue doing their job. So in the event that the CAO still exists, but it is no longer capable of doing his job, and something came up, then staff would come to council for guidance and say, okay, we have a problem, what should we do? But the authority to do stuff is still there, the ability to do it is there. I have great confidence that the CAO contributes to this, but in terms of the day-to-day functioning, he's, how do I say this politely? If he's doing his job properly, he's not necessary for that, the day-to-day stuff. So he is in the position of preparing for these eventualities. When we discussed this the last time, the automatic assignment of stuff may not be appropriate. The issue that may come up may be in somebody else's responsibilities, and that's why it was felt by those of us who feel like this wasn't necessary, that it was okay to get rid of it.
So council would designate then?
We always have that authority. We have one employee, that's the CAO. If he's not there to do his job, then we would have to do something at some point. It would depend on the nature of the incapacity, but as one thing that's been pointed out, and I'd like to acknowledge this, even when the CAO is not here or is on vacation or it's the weekend, he's still on call and still responds. And so to have something that was automatic in place was felt, let's say by this councillor, as not being necessary. I don't feel that we'll find ourselves in the lurch, whereas the automatic transference of power might prove problematic depending on the nature of the issue.
Thank you.
Sure.
That's it?
I mean, Bruce, I'm only speaking here. There are other people who have microphones flashing. You might want to.
Councillor Black, you wish to supplement?
I was just going to say one more thing. I think it was Mr. Beal who at our policy meeting said that some of these older policies, especially the CAO one, was created in times before cell phones, before the ease of being able to get in touch with people was ever present. That, like Councillor Evans said, if if the CAO is not around, he's on call or has a cell phone or is able to check emails, and so the sort of day-to-day stuff would still be able to be dealt with by him, so, anyway.
I had a couple of questions. What I didn't understand was this 1/8 of 1 cent. What's it based, like I just couldn't get the.
The analogy raised by the staff at the commission was that a $225,000 budget would be equivalent to 1/8 of 1 cent of the existing property assessed value within the southeast region. They tried to give that so that each area could think about what size that meant for them. So it's not that they have a taxing authority that they can ask for that 1/8. They used the tax as an example of the type of budget they were looking to proceed with. So
You haven't explained it to.
So all of the assessed value in southeast corner of the province.
Yeah.
If you took that total amount.
Yeah.
And you had 1 cent, 1/8 of 1 cent of that value.
1/8 of 1 cent of
Right.
that value.
Would create $225,000. So that was being used to say, that's the type of magnitude of what we would be asking for. So
How much is that going to raise our taxes? That's what that's more concerned to me.
No.
Like, what does that work out like on a $5,000 tax bill?
Right, and it becomes.
That would make something I could understand.
Right, and what it becomes is a question of budget. If that comes, we would look at it from a question of budget. It probably would not require a tax increase. And I think Mr. Beal said that right now that rough amount would be approximately $7,000 or $8,000 in total. 1/8 of 1%. So.
1/8 of 1 cent for $100 assessed.
1/8 of 1 cent.
Mr. Beal, you want to?
Yeah, I guess, 1/8 of 1 cent, our current tax rate is 1.5500. 1/8 of 1 cent is 0.1125 of the 155. 0.1125 would represent, right now, 1 cent on our tax rate is a little over $60,000 in revenue to the town. 1/8 of a cent. 1 cent is 0.01. Anyway, it would represent between $7,000 and $8,000. And as your worship says, that during budget time, that request would come in. It would be put in a first draft of the budget. And as we do each year, we would work to maintain the tax rate during the evaluation of all expenses that we have. So it would form part of the requests that are made, part of the changes that are made, part of the adjustments that are made during the budget process.
Keith, I don't think that this request is one that would cause our taxes to go up. What I'm worried about is 3 or 4 or 5 of these coming in from the Retail Service Commission.
It's just like, it's okay to have one little one, then they say, well, we got one, we better have a few more. So that was my question with that. Another question I had was the questions on phase 2 of Lorne Street. Is that going to be out shortly, or is it wait until the plans are all done? Like, are they gonna go the way they planned out through the industrial park, or are they looking at the alternate routes too? That's what I
think, Mr. Atkin, you want?
Yeah, they're still evaluating the various options, and once they've finished those evaluations, they're just focusing on getting phase 1, contract 1 and 2 out now, which is out to tender, closes tomorrow. We got to close that, reevaluate. So once they finish that, they're going to be working on finalizing the process for phase 2.
Okay. In phase 2, are we actively pursuing to purchase land to do phase 2?
Land is being explored, yes.
Well, isn't that putting the cart before the horse if, you know, you don't know which way you're gonna go?
Even if they were, they're just options based on if things get approved to do a certain way, then the option's there, but if they're not, then they don't go that way. So in other words, they're being explored under the pretense that the design will be done and that land will be required.
Was this land thought about before for parks, before we went to the flood control part of it?
Could you, I don't know, I didn't understand the question, sorry.
Were they looking
Depends
at?
who you talk to. Yes, it was. So I mean, from a public works perspective, perhaps not. From a Parks and Recreation perspective, yes. During the municipal review discussions that were done a few years ago, it was talked about potentially floodlands could be, given that the development is limited, they could be areas that recreational land could be developed and trails could be developed. All takes money. So it's a matter of how much and when and if it makes sense. And as Mr. Acton has indicated, you know, I think when they looked at looking at the design in and around the Lawrence Street area, there's lots of different options being pursued and considered. So the opportunity to acquire land, they're exploring a number of different options, and pending on who's willing and able to provide land and sell at a reasonable price to the town, will help determine some of the options that may be come back to council.
Is this put through for this drainage, this route, so that you can put it through to have the funding for the parks and recreation helped out by our by the 3 levels of government to say it's for a water course change? I guess that's the way.
I'm not sure I understand your question. If you maybe try me one more time on it.
Well, I think I can get it, as that, that the question is whether we are using capital money to supplement parks and tourism development.
That's a simple way of, yeah.
But part of the problem of building the infrastructure for flooding is that the state of as we saw 2 hours on Sunday morning, the amount of water that comes in now is so much different, and there's so much capacity of the weather hitting even the new infrastructure, that if you don't have ways to retain and hold them back or place them before they can meet their, it'll still overrun at some point some of the infrastructure we're going to put in. So you really need to have a retention and detention strategy attached to all of this in order to be able to help deal with some of those major types of events that are going to happen over the next 30 or 40 years. So yes, it is a retention detention facility first, and it is a recreation facility second.
Well, did we have much flooding on Lawrence Street on Sunday?
Yeah, a couple of the roads were closed off for a few hours, and yeah.
Nothing major?
They were closed, just.
Yeah. Okay. But, yeah, I still say if the ditches were dug out, it would get away better.
Any other questions? No? Okay, I would need a motion adjourning the regular council meeting and moving into in camera. Moved by Councillor Finney, seconded by Councillor Aiken. Question? All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. Those opposed? We are adjourned and move into in camera.